All right, welcome everybody. My name's Jack, and I'm here with my wonderful friend Daniel.
Hi,
Welcome back.
Jack.
Hey, yeah, welcome back, all of us, to talk openly. It's fantastic to be here. It was confusing to me because yesterday I just got back from Sacramento for a weekend retreat with Lions Roar Dharma Center. And I was thinking we had a couple days, right, to like prepare for Talk Openly, but no, we had a day.
It's upon us.
It's upon us. It's here. It's Tuesday. I
Yeah.
know.
I felt the same way as you, Jack. I was like, what? It's already? Huh? What are we talking about? It's already
Yeah,
Tuesday?
totally. Yeah, it's been a
Yeah.
weekend. But yeah, tonight we're talking about what's known as Adhisthana. And that it's this very powerful experience with a guru. And so it's going to be a fun conversation tonight. I have some, yeah, I think one or two things to share from my retreat experience that relate to Adhisthanta. Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts as well.
We're talking about real magic.
The real magic. That's right. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
good
Yeah, no
stuff.
joke.
No joke. I know. That's the thing is that like I got into Buddhism, especially Tibetan Buddhism, thinking like, okay, this is like some magical stuff. I'm gonna be transported to like different realms and whatnot. And and then it became like a a practice. It's a training. It's, discipline and um being consistent. And but there are these elements of magic that really do come through just through every day. It's not some kind of
No.
crazy experience, but also is,
That's what's so weird about it is that it is magical. It's just not the way we expected it.
Yeah, it's
I
like
feel
totally
that way
not.
about everything on the path,
Yeah,
literally every aspect, everything from Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, and everything in between, all of it. None of it is what I thought it was. And when I think I know, I don't know. I
yep,
still, like it's constantly like I'm like, oh, okay, I've been doing this for a while. I know what's going on. Nope, nope, truly don't. It
yep,
just reveals itself continually.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is interesting how that's kind of like just everyday life where,
Yeah.
the older I get, the more I'm kind of like, wow, this is complicated. Like I don't understand. I think I get like a handhold and then I lose a foothold, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and that's true with Dharma as well, where it's like, wow, there's just so much we're learning and it's fascinating.
I think so too. I'm excited about this conversation. I must be completely honest that you're the one who brought up this subject, this topic.
Yeah.
And I until I started thinking about it and started sort of it's hard actually. It's not a topic that's easy to research, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
So the more that I kind of got into it and was getting my notes down, the more I realized like, oh, yeah, I do know what this is all about. Right. Okay.
Right. Right, right,
I
right.
get it. I just didn't quite have the lingo for it just yet.
Right. Yeah. And hopefully that helps others who are listening. Like if you've heard of Adhisthanta, or like that, power of the guru, we're gonna get into it more later.
Spiritual blessings.
Spiritual blessings. Yes. Great.
Yeah, I'm excited about this topic, really. I truly am. And
Yeah.
I'm glad that you brought it up. I was a
Awesome.
little bit, I was like, man, I don't know how I'm gonna, like I'm gonna have to stretch on this one, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how to talk about it, but I think it's gonna be a really rich conversation.
Yeah, me too. And the cool thing is that, I imagine we've both had some experiences that we can share with folks that, maybe people who are listening have also had some Adhisthanta experiences, some blessings that have felt really powerful and yeah. kind of like a little shifting point in your training and in your life.
Yeah.
It certainly
Yeah.
has. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, how was your experience at the retreat? And what's it feel like to be back?
It was really amazing. So yeah, for folks who are listening, Daniel and I attended a retreat with our teacher and some Sangha members this weekend. And yeah, I before I left, and I'm pretty sure I brought this up last week, but just feeling like out of tune, like really, um, yeah, unsettled and just
Yeah.
depressed, right?
Yeah.
And the cool thing is that it's not like that stuff is gone today, but it's totally just put back into perspective from being with our teacher and being with friends. So that's one of the big takeaways for me is like, we just continue, right? We just continue what we're doing
Don't
and
give up.
don't
Just
give up. And Dharma really gives us the tools to be able to meet and withstand and even befriend, all of our experiences.
yeah.
And to really like get all the juice from life that we can. Um, and I think that's one of the things about depression that is so depressing is that it feels like there's no juice to life. And it's like
Yeah.
really hard to, get meaning out of what what I'm doing. And so um to be reminded that that juice is there even in the midst of depression. It's like, wow, let me really feel sadness, and it's kind of beautiful. I've also been journaling too. So I didn't have my notebook for this retreat. Normally I take notes. Um, but I didn't this time, which was an interesting and different experience for me. And part of our training during the retreat was to recall, what we had been hearing, and, try to really remember what did the guru say, and what does that mean? And, how do I interpret that? And then how would
Yeah.
I share that with others? Um, and so when I got back here yesterday, I started doing some journaling and just reflecting on kind of the main points that I remember and that stood out to me from retreat. And I think that's a very helpful way to train. Um, so yeah, I feel like it was a very special weekend. Super grateful that I could come and very grateful to be in the presence of my teacher and Sangha. So I'm good. I'm,
Yeah.
I'm good. I'm still sad, but I'm good at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting? I think that I feel like everything that you said really resonated with me.
Mhm.
I had that same a very similar kind of feeling of being sort of out of tune, and out of tune, sort of depressed, whatever, my usual nihilistic tendencies and
Mhm.
whatever. And then the retreat, what I found really interesting, this has happened, I think, before. I know it's happened before, which is it actually provokes something in me while I'm there. Like, for the most part, like people are smiling and having a nice time and whatever. But like inside of me, like I felt a real, like there was like, some like anger and confusion and mm, not all positive emotions.
Yeah. Yeah.
During the retreat. And I watched as it kind of started with that. And then I watched as it all sort of matured and kind of ripened over the 2 days that we were there. And it's continuing to carry forward, right? Into my regular life now. And so it's been really neat to watch how like my own thinking, like my beliefs, expectations, what I think I know, all these things, how that was causing sort of a certain tightness and a certain sort of depressive state. And
Mm,
then how like there was this sort of tweaking that happened, not some like big, huge revolution, just a slight sort of tweaking of my thoughts. And a lot of this happened during discussions with Sangha members, like
mm,
sort of arguing points or just kind of like
mhm.
just thinking about things together. And I just noticed my thinking sort of like change ever so slightly. And then by the end of the retreat, I was like, like I still sort of feel the way that I felt coming into this, but it's clear and it's okay. It's okay,
Yeah,
you know? And I
yeah,
can kind of see how not giving up and just continuing with the practice, I can see like, oh, okay, I'm still here. I'm still walking this path. And I'm glad. I'm grateful for that. I'm glad
yeah,
that I didn't, haven't sort of let my own sort of whatever my own tendencies derail me too much, right? And it's sort of perfect timing, right? It kind of seems that way with retreats, like they seem perfectly timed.
yeah. I've noticed that as well, where it's like, okay, I really needed that.
That's right. That's right.
Really needed some clarity of mind right now.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah,
it's like the ringing of a bell, like it's really still ringing quite loudly, right? Like the teachings and my understanding and like it's all sort of like coming together now in ordinary life, right? And in my meditation since then. So it's been really, really instructive and helpful. So
yeah,
I'm so grateful that I got to be there and I got to see you. That was really nice too, Jack.
that was really nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
super grateful for that.
Mm.
Yeah, just that like kind of being able to like bounce ideas off of other people who are working on something similar and maybe not even necessarily agree, right? Disagree,
Yeah. Yeah.
and just to know that we're all working on this together is it's inspiring and it's like um it's to not feel isolated, I think is really
Hmm.
really important.
Yeah, yeah. It was
Yeah.
cool too, the not being isolated part. So I didn't stay there overnight, like I traveled back and forth. And on Saturday, I traveled back and forth with our friend Sue Forster, one of the
Hmm.
meditation instructors at Lions Roar. And she on the drive back, we had a decent like arguing about not discussing, it was a discussion, but sort of arguing points and that was so helpful, like it was really,
Yeah.
really, really helpful. I find that I really appreciate the Sangha members that I get to do that with, where I get to just say like blah. This is what I'm thinking. This
Yeah.
is what I'm feeling. This is what I'm upset about. This is what's driving me crazy or whatever. And then I like inevitably like at some type of teaching comes through there, right? Some type of correction in my thinking comes from engaging with the Sangha members like that.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, that correction in thinking is so important and the correction in training too. Like,
Correct.
I remember last week during our talk last Tuesday, I was talking about how I was, considering what kind of meditation I could do to help me with fear.
Yeah.
And I was thinking of kind of like, okay, how about I just like do some kind of exposure therapy where I'm like, in my fear and just, kind of continuing to just meditate, by having windows open while I meditate. And there was something that Lama said during our retreat where uh, really his response, um, which I didn't ask directly about that specific kind of meditation, but his response to like when we experience strong fear is not to just like grind through it. It's to really, really come from a place of loving kindness, and to focus our training from there.
Yeah.
And so if it's not if it's not coming from that place, then it's yeah, I think that's a little bit of a masochistic approach.
Hmm.
Like, oh, I'm just gonna face it. I'm just gonna be in it and
Yeah.
feel the
Yeah.
fear. Yeah, instead it's more like do what, like do what will make this training really like useful for you. And if
Yeah.
kind of having the windows open is just going to make me distracted and, scared for 24 minutes is probably not the best way to meditate. So, um, I wish I had kind of his exact words in my mind around that, but it stuck with me that it's like, I don't have to do that yet. Like maybe I don't need to do that kind of training. And I
Right.
can, I learned too that a lot of, you know, um, Dharma, important meditations, can involve a lot of visualizing. So
Yeah.
like if I want to work
That's
through
right.
here, I can do a death
Bring it
visualization
in. Bring
or
it
something
in.
like that. Yeah.
You could just be sitting
Um,
there totally safe and content, everything's fine,
yeah.
and you're like, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and bring some fear in.
Yeah. Like I could die within the next,
Yeah.
half hour.
Let,
What would
let me work with that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't, yeah, I can work with fear in other ways. So that was powerful.
Is kind of interesting to me. I feel like it's similar to like a yoga, like a physical yoga practice, in the sense that if you don't know what you're doing like me, then there's a good chance that you're gonna like try to force something. Like you think you're supposed to do,
Yeah.
you think you understand a particular position or move or whatever, and then you try to force it and you hurt
Yeah.
yourself, right?
Yeah.
You pull something or whatever. Whereas if an instructor were there, they'd be like, no, gentle,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
ease in like
Yep.
that, right? And then you can feel the difference between like a shove and a relaxed sort of decompression, right? Like it, and I feel like that's kind of like I kind of got that sense when you were talking about it, like that your tendency might actually be to like, oh, I'm supposed to sort of like exposure therapy, like, come
Yeah.
on,
Like
don't be
I'm gonna
such
go
a
hard,
let's do
like,
this thing, right? Let's go ahead and bring the monsters out from under the bed and let's
yeah.
meditate with
Yeah.
them, right? And instead, it sounds like what you got maybe was like a, hey, there's a softer, gentler, nicer, kinder, more effective way to do
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
without
Yeah,
hurting yourself.
that's such a great metaphor. Because I remember so many times at the beginning of like learning yoga where you
Yeah.
just be like, okay, so I'm still supposed to go like as hard as these people like in the
Yeah.
videos or in front of me. And that was such a great learning experience
Yeah.
to, over many years to realize like, oh, it's so much more interesting actually to
Yeah.
do it this like gradual way, and
Right. And
to
if you do it
learn.
that way, it
Mhm.
results in this deepening, right?
Right, right. And then
Yeah,
you can go way deeper than before. Yeah,
exactly. Right.
yeah.
Yeah. So
Super
cool.
cool. I'm gonna remind myself of that yoga metaphor. I like it. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Yeah. Well, shall we do some Lojong training? It sounds like
I'm so glad that you asked, Jack.
use some training of the mind
Always. You should
always.
never stop.
Yep. All right.
Well, we've gotten this one before.
Oh yeah, okay. That's right. This is number 6. In post meditation, be a child of illusion. Great. So Charlie kept going. He says the way to elevate and liberate ourselves on the spiritual path is by maintaining the perspective of the insubstantial nature of things in our everyday activities. Instead of viewing people and things as discrete and unique, we need to bring the understanding of dependent arising to our everyday lives. Um, so this slogan, I remember when I first read it, like first time I got a Lojong booklet and was flipping through, this one was just like, I had a really hard time knowing where to start with this one. Um, and for one, it was because I didn't really understand what post meditation meant.
Right.
Like, is it like, oh, just like a few minutes after meditation or
Yeah.
like,
Right, right. Yeah, fair enough.
right? But post meditation, it's like anytime that you're not meditating, as far as am kind of aware.
Right. When you're not meditating, you're in post meditation.
Right. And then be a child of illusion. Um, that's was just so fascinating. And it's still fascinating because I don't totally understand it, but what I sense it to be is that, we're in this world of duality, where, we feel separate and are separate in some ways, right?
Yeah,
We're our own kind of unique um entity. Um, but this illusion, this kind of like playing with illusion that like, okay, it's not that, we're not separate. And yet we're having to engage in this dualistic world.
right.
Um, because that's what our consciousness is, um, yeah, appearing to us as. And so how cool that like, even though that is a false kind of consciousness, that we can be playful. Like I hear in a child evolution, I hear like playfulness,
Yeah,
like being able to look at everything kind of anew
that's right.
and fresh, right? Like if we look with kind of the awareness that things aren't as they seem, we can kind of play with it and be like, wow, this is all just like new and interesting and fascinating, right?
Exactly, right. It's
Yeah.
reminiscent of beginner's mind, right? The
Yeah,
child's
yeah.
mind. That it's what I find really interesting about this is that so we go from this conceptualization of phenomena as discrete dualistic things, right? There's a you, there's a me, and there's these discrete and unique objects or phenomena, right? And we go from that view, then we learn a little bit, right? And then at least this is my experience. I still have this tendency where then I'll see something or hear something or experience a phenomena, and then I'll immediately begin to sort of like be like, and that's dependent on this, and that's dependent on this, and this is dependent on that, and da, 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 da. And it's just like it like happens really, really quickly, right? Where I recognize sort of the emptiness in the sense that it is all dependent. And I'm not saying that I can see all the dependencies because they're infinite, right? But there is this sort of like feeling of like, whew, right, like all these things are so, dependent on this, dependent on that, right? But that's also a conceptualization that's
Yeah.
still spinning my mind around trying to conceptualize phenomena as something that is dependent, right? I can rest actually. I can relax and just
Mm.
know that that's how it is. It's okay, right? Like
Mhm.
I don't have to know anything. That's the difference between like a child and an adult. Child, it doesn't, they don't know what they don't know and it's okay, right?
Yeah.
Whereas an adult, oftentimes, at least in my experience, they're very married or attached to their knowledge, their knowing how things are. And so I
Right.
feel like that's part of the encouragement here, at least the way I'm taking it, is that it's actually it's there's no point in conceptualizing it either as discrete and unique or as this sort of dependent arising, right? Like you don't have to like think about it. It can sort of
Yeah.
like once you recognize it, you can stop there and then just like watch like what is this? Like an open mind, like you were saying, right? Like, oh, okay, cool. Well, what's appearing to me right now? And then you get to see it for exactly what it is rather than spinning your mind around trying to make up stories about it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, that is, I think, exactly right. And part of me too is wondering, like, is there a way to read it also as like illusion's child, be a child of illusion, and I don't know if that is, but it's kind of interesting, to think if that's also a
I
way.
think that that would be fair to say. It seems right
Yeah.
to me, right?
Yeah.
Are we not children of illusion? Are we, isn't Daniel and
Totally.
Jack, aren't
Yeah.
we children of,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yes,
Like
we
what
are.
what is it? What is a Daniel?
Right, right. It's an
Yeah.
illusion born of illusion. Or
Yeah.
rather, it's an illusion born of delusion.
That's right. Yeah. Sweet. Okay, great. I'm glad. You know what's going to be cool as we continue to do the show over the years is that we're going to get slogans over and over again, and they're going to be new every
Yeah,
time, you
yeah.
know?
We're gonna have a new take on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Because wouldn't that be sad if we thought that we just like got a slogan.
Yeah, I let's just skip this one, move on to another one because we
Right.
already know everything about that.
We hopefully a Sangha member would like approach us and be like, y'all, we got a problem.
Yeah. I wish they would. That'd be great.
Totally. But knock us down some pigs, please.
If we ever get to that point. Hopefully we don't need it right now though.
Yeah,
I
hopefully.
still feel like a child who doesn't know anything.
Oh my God, me too. Big time. Sometimes I'm like, we're doing the show and I don't know anything.
I know sometimes I worry. I'm like, what kind of BS am I spewing?
Probably it's probably good to assess that every once in a while. I'm trying to do that as well. Probably
Yeah.
I think all of us, um, even just in everyday life, not even Dharma stuff, right? But how often do I
Oh.
catch myself like kind of saying something where I'm like, is that even true?
Yeah, oh gosh, the stuff just coming out of my mouth,
Just
right?
like,
Like
wow.
I don't even know. I don't even haven't even assigned a truth value to it myself, but I'm
Yeah.
speaking as if I have, as if I know.
I know, I know. It's yeah. Oh, the humans will human, don't we?
Yeah. That's right. We're just gonna human away.
We're gonna human away. Well, so tonight we're talking about something that's like, I think beyond human. And I'm really, it's both,
I don't think so,
you
Jack. I'm
don't
gonna
think so?
argue with you about that.
Okay.
I
Well,
don't think
here's my reasoning. And, I think a Buddha and a Bodhisattva, high level teachers, have, gone beyond. Um, and so in that way, there's, um, certainly a transcendence of everyday human.
fair enough.
But yeah. Are we able to get there? Yes, there's the path there. Um, but this Adhisthana, this, powerful blessing of the guru is our focus tonight. And I'm so glad that you were willing to talk about this.
Yeah.
Yeah, just because I've had I've had some interesting experiences with this over the years with Lama, as well as some visiting teachers, and even just with images, some Buddha images. Um, and I imagine that there's folks listening who have also experienced something like this. And in fact, I wonder if this is true for you, Daniel. If you had any Adhisthanta experiences before you even started coming to the temple? Like, was there anything that you noticed like in your life that was like drawing you towards Buddhism?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Like kind of
Yeah.
felt like, hey, this feels familiar. It feels like oddly familiar. Does that ever happen to you?
It does. I think, the thing that came to my mind when you were saying this might be a little out of left field, but I don't think I would have felt familiar. I don't think that I would have had any appreciation for it, nor do I think I would have entertained the notion of walking this path without having softened up through psychedelic experiences.
Sure.
I
Mhm.
really do feel like there was an aspect to that um there Lama sometimes has talked about, when I've talked to him about these experiences, he's like, yeah, it's like you're jumping up and looking over the fence, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that it doesn't work, it doesn't you can't get over the fence by jumping and looking over, right? And so
Yeah.
it told me initially, like, just go around, you can walk around, and then later he said, just become the fence. But there were these experiences that felt so important and life-changing, but I didn't know what to do with them. I didn't know
Yeah.
how to understand it. I couldn't make heads or tails out of it. And so I was really confused. And it's really interesting that the more that my practice deepens, the more that some of that, actually both my psychedelic and religious experiences and my religious upbringing, a
Yeah.
lot of it, there was a lot of like confusion, like why was it like that? How did, what does this mean? But then in my practice, like it turns out that there's this deepening of my understanding of all of those experiences, and they gain meaning,
Yeah.
you know. So I don't know, I don't think that that's in the same vein here, maybe not. But I don't know that there's any. I have had some of these experiences in practice that are very clearly beyond the ordinary, and are in fact, I think, what's being described here by this term. Um, but I don't know that I recall any of that kind of thing happening before I started practicing.
Yeah. Yeah.
What about you?
Well, I think actually, I mean, in similar ways that maybe you have, there have been experiences, books,
Yeah.
other people who have just tipped me off to something different, that life was a lot deeper, and in a way that I really desired.
Yes.
Um, this deepening of meaning in life. Um, and so in high school, I did actually, through my 10th grade English teacher started reading a lot of like beat poetry and that kind of literature. And so I was introduced to kind of like Eastern philosophy in high school and really resonated with me. Um, Read Siddhartha, Um, and then earlier on too, I had moments, in like history class where I'd be like, wow, like Japan is the coolest country to ever exist. I want to know everything about it. I felt like magnetized, learning
Yeah.
about Japan and like the different religions and culture. So just these little things that was like, okay, it kind of feels like guideposts, And I do wonder if that in part is maybe from like a past life Adhisthanta experience from a guru, receiving kind of a blessing and then because it's a powerful experience. And so I wonder if that carries on into next lives, kind of a way to remember what you
Yeah,
did.
I believe so. I think so because you use the term resonate, right? And that's really, from what I can understand, that's what Adhisthana is, right?
Mm,
It's this resonance, right? And when we're talking about it in like maybe we can talk about it in um just in relation to our guru, but it actually extends, right? And we can even the Adhisthana of Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha,
yeah.
extending to us through all of these different forms. And I really love this analogy of this spiritual blessing, as it's otherwise, another word for it. It comes by many different names. That it's a way of resonating, right? And so, like,
Mhm.
what happens is the Buddha or the Guru, the realized being, is sort of essentially, for lack of a better way of talking about it, is sort of vibrating at an enlightened frequency,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And then what happens is those beings who, like, who are disposed to it, right, that have the sort of the necessary requirements have been met, so to speak, they begin to resonate with it. And so, like, you and I, what we're talking about these things that happened way before we even thought about Buddhism, I
Mhm.
think are all part of that resonance, right? And that
Yeah.
we've been acquiring these characteristics through many, many, many lifetimes. And
Yeah.
so now, and so I think that that's exactly it picks up, right? I think
Yeah.
that there's this, like, as we can get close to the guru, just like those, what do they call those, tuning forks?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So you
Yeah.
hit, so Lama or the guru is vibrating there like the one tuning fork, and then you put the other one close to it. You don't touch, you don't do anything, you just put it close, and all of a sudden this one's vibrating at the same
So
frequency,
cool.
right? And I
Yeah.
think that that's really, like, that's kind of like what we're talking about here, and it's so beautiful because I saw this quote. Hang on, let me see if I can find it. Hang on,
Hmm.
it's right here. By D.T. Suzuki, a philosopher, Japanese philosopher, religious
Hmm.
guy, and author, all kinds of stuff. He said, "The Buddha is creative life itself. He creates in himself, he creates himself in innumerable forms with all the means native to him. This is called his Adhisthana, as it were, emanating from his personality." And if you think about it from the teachings of the Mahayana and the Vajrayana, that the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas can take on all these different forms, right? They can tailor their appearances and how they act and everything for to
Hmm.
meet the needs of different individuals. And so, in that sense, there's no limitation on the form of the Adhisthana, right? How it
Yeah,
comes. That's why when we're talking about these blessings, they're not coming in one way. It's not like you go, like we go and we touch the guru's forehead with our forehead, and that is the only way that this stuff happens, right?
right, right.
No, it can come in all kinds of ways, right?
Yeah,
This resonance can happen through other people, as you and I are talking about, through beat poetry, as you were mentioning, right? It could come through infinite forms, right? There's no limitation
yeah,
in the way that it can be transmitted. The
yeah,
point is that we, as the receiving end, are properly tuned, and we keep working on tuning ourselves, right? So that we can then match up and receive that resonance, so that we can vibrate in harmony with that spirit of enlightenment, right?
right, right. Yeah, I mean, I think even something as simple as like noticing a beautiful flower and being really
Yes.
taken by it, that also is Adhisthana
That's
from the
right.
Guru, because had I not received the teaching, to look into interdependence and, the causes and conditions of the flower, like that experience of amazement just wouldn't be as
That's right.
strong. And
It would
so,
just stop right there. You
yeah,
would you
right.
would know beautiful flower, nice smell, pretty colors, and what's next?
Yeah, right, right. But to see it, to really like start to
Ah,
acknowledge how it exists is just really gorgeous, more than it could ever, appear. So that
yes.
also, that experience of just kind of like real amazement with our world, I
Mm,
think is definitely a guru blessing, because
indeed it
that's
is.
what they're teaching us,
Right? Right.
um, that's really what they're teaching us. And so any kind of recognition of the wisdom that they're passing on, is their blessing.
That's right.
Um, just so much gratitude, that
Yeah.
that we
Yeah.
can start to see things,
But
that
this isn't, I think that we may be coloring it a little bit. mm, we may be using a bit of a broad brush here, and I think it might be
are.
nice to refine it a little bit. I don't think that we're barking up the wrong tree or anything, but there is this sort of sense of that what we're talking about is sort of vague, and we're just sort of like slapping a word onto some effect, right? But no, we're actually talking about an actual infusion of spiritual energy, right? Like it's not a vague notion, right? It's not just like, oh, something made me feel good and that's
Right,
Adhisthana, right?
right. No,
Nope.
it's a
Maybe,
real
maybe,
powerful experience. Yeah, yeah,
right, right. It's
right,
it's transformative experience. It's
right.
transformative energy, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
and one description of it, is an engulfing wave or flood of splendor and power.
That's right. So
Yeah.
that's right. And so I really like this. I really like this. So in the if you look up the etymology on all of this, so Arishtana, that's the Sanskrit word, right? And it's sort of like I didn't feel like it really quite got it, right? It means like standing over, means like sort of like they're taking possession or they're coming
Yeah.
into you, and there's like this protective presence that shows up, right? And
Yeah.
at first I was like, I don't know about all that, right?
Yeah.
But then the Tibetan word for this is Jinlap. And Jinlap means what you just said, an engulfing wave or flood of splendor and power. And it's
Yeah.
interesting because I have had that experience. It made me think about this, that I think that it seems to me like the Tibetan word is really talking about like the experience of what it feels like as you receive the blessings. It is this engulfing
Yeah.
wave, right, of power and splendor, right? That's what the experience feels like, and that the result of it is what the Sanskrit word appears to be talking about, which is ultimately this sovereign protection, this dwelling within of the guru, right? Or of the, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
of their realization.
Yeah, that's yeah, no, a great way to put it. I'd love to hear, one of these times that you've had that experience if you feel open to sharing.
Yeah, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about the more powerful the powerful ones that I've experienced, but they're directly related to Guru Yoga. And it's really interesting because I'd been doing a variety of practices and things for years actually. And for a long time, I kept hearing 6 session Guru Yoga, 6 session. I was like, is it succession, 6 session? What are they saying? I never received any teachings on it, nothing.
Yeah, yeah.
And I remember one time Lama was talking with a bunch of students and he goes, and everybody's doing 6 session Guru Yoga, right?
You're
And
like,
I was like, um, I don't even know what it is. I just keep hearing this phrase, right?
yeah,
But
yeah.
then we eventually I asked him many times, and he was evasive, and he gave me, I mean, he gave me answers, but he was evasive. And then eventually I showed up to a retreat where he taught on it. And I was like, oh, that finally, yay, this is what this 6 session Guru Yoga is.
Yeah,
And then I started doing it, and the very first time, and many, if not every subsequent time, there is in fact this wave,
yeah.
energetic wave feeling that is part of that practice. And I was so blown. I mean, it really shook me to my core because I hadn't felt anything like that in that context before,
Um,
right? So
and like
it
the
was new
conflict.
to me. I'd felt that sort of energetic wave before, but more like in an orgasm or something, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
not I had never had it in this kind of a context where I'm just engaged in what I think is just sort of like I'm just reading some doing some visualization, I'm just whatever.
yeah,
And all of a sudden, boom, whoa, like what is that, right? And
yeah,
so that I feel like, so I know that in terms of Vajrayana practice, that's probably one of the most palpable forms of Adhisthana, right? Is the experience that we may have during Guru Yoga. That would be the experience of feeling the wave. And then subsequently, that sort of like what happens, the protection that shows up as a result of doing the practice.
yeah, yeah. Oh, very cool. Yeah, it's a powerful practice. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
where I've not felt it. So, there's all these variety, these different ways in which it's transmitted, right? And like infinite, but basically like normally it's associated with like during empowerment ceremonies,
huh?
right? And don't get me wrong, I've had nice empowerment ceremonies and felt kind of nice and special afterward, but not that I didn't feel that same sort of direct, like, whoa, what was that?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And then there's also, like we do like the ceremonial sort of scarf offering, right? The
Hmm.
the kata offering, like that kind of stuff where, and you'll notice, if you have with your teacher, like the physical touch is an incredibly powerful experience,
Yeah,
right? That
yeah.
it doesn't feel so like, like the there's something in that, the chemistry there, right? Our
Hmm.
mix of like devotion, our aspirations, our intentions, everything is part of this equation. And when it's all right, there can be this experience. I'm not saying that physical touch is an important, it has to be a part of it. I'm just saying like that's one method where I've also felt like, whoa, okay,
Yeah,
holy moly, something's going on there and I don't know quite what it is.
yeah, for sure. what times that I've experienced it very strongly have been not a word exchanged or a touch exchanged, but just eye contact, um, and a real sense of I mean, it's so hard to find the words for it, but like I was in in his field,
Yeah.
like I was like in like being held energetically.
Yeah.
Um very strange and amazing. Um and a strong feeling of love and
The love
and
feel the
being
yeah.
loved.
Yes.
And one thing that feels very important when I do um, tantric practice is to really get a sense of the deity's eyes and really trying to visualize their gaze in this
Ah,
very loving, compassionate, fully accepting gaze.
right.
And so there have been times where I've been able to feel that same experience that I've had with my teacher while visualizing the
Mm.
eyes of this deity.
Ah,
Um, because that's him,
yeah.
that's what we're going for. Um, and so that's really beautiful. And so I had an experience at the temple Sunday night. So I went over to temple Sunday night after having dinner with a friend because I was going to pick up a mala that I had got in the little gift exchange for, raising money for the cottage. And funny story, when the mala wasn't there. So I decided, I wasn't sure if I was going to stay. I was thinking about going back to my friend's house so I could rest. But I was like, you know what? I'm here. And I don't get to be here often. And so I went back to the Gompa and just kind of walked around in the dark. Um, and then I felt this magnetism almost pulling me towards the Tara shrine.
Mm.
And I spent some time in front of the Tara statue and the images and got to see our Sangha members' ashes container. And um, I felt that same sense of just being like drawn in, that like magnetism, that warmth. And then our teacher's gaze, I was like, uh, that statue is so interesting. It's such a different depiction of Tara than I've ever seen. But I really got to see Lama's vision for that statue. And I really think that the artist got the eyes right. It was like I was
Ah,
really feeling my teacher. And so that was a really powerful experience, just being in the presence of sacred imagery and really letting it kind of absorb me and I absorb the imagery. And it was this exchange. It was really strong. So cool.
oh, I love hearing about that. I have had some pretty remarkable experiences that are they're similar, at the temple. It's a pretty special place. And I really like what you're saying about the eyes. I've heard stories of all kinds of stories actually about, great teachers and their disciples. And the disciples are like working so hard and like nothing's moving, nothing's happening. And then there's just a glance. And all of
Mm,
a sudden, boom, it's
yeah.
like they're like, oh, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like it's a complete feeling of it's like being able to surrender, but you know, not in the way of like giving up, right? It's like, I actually don't have to concern myself with what I was concerning myself with. It's
Right.
just inconsequential, in the, you know, experience of like complete love
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
compassion.
I
Yeah.
think it's really, I think one thing that, like, when we're talking about this, it's really, I think one of the things that I feel like is really important is that, a lot of people want something, right? They want to
Right,
receive
right.
something. I mean, like
Yeah.
that's normal. And it's not like if we believe that somebody's like like a holy being with special powers or whatever, we're gonna or be like, come on, give it to me, right?
Yeah.
But that's not how this works,
Yeah.
right? Like it's not like it's in the guru's power to just snap their fingers and
Yeah.
deliver enlightenment into your mind stream just like that. That's just not how it works, right? If they could lay their hands on us then and fix everything, they would. But teaching is the way it works. And I think in a way, this is like a subtle way of teaching, right? It's like a mind to mind or heart to heart teaching, but you can't you can't you can't get it if you're closed off to it, right? Like there's this saying,
Or craving it, like really, like you were saying, being attached to that outcome of like getting the blessing,
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's just it, is we have to, like when we talk about like purification practices and stuff, we have to clean out the container, right? Make sure that it's a proper vessel, receptacle for it. Otherwise, even if some of that pure nectar gets in there, it's not going to work because it's all dirty, you
Yeah,
know?
for
It's like
sure.
that. But I think one saying that really became that I've heard before, but that really became very clear to me in thinking about these spiritual blessings was the saying, if you see your Lama as a Buddha, you get the blessings of a Buddha. If you see your Lama as a Bodhisattva, you get the blessings of a Bodhisattva. And if you see your Lama as ordinary, you get the blessings of an ordinary being, right? And so
Mm.
there's this interesting role that our own perceptions play in all of this, right? Like how we're viewing them and how we're viewing ourselves in all of this has a really big role to play in it. And that's part of the
Yeah.
preparation. That's part of what you have to do to make sure that your tuning fork is, prepared to resonate at that particular frequency. And I feel like that's a lot of what the work is about, is honing that, and making it so that you can vibrate at that frequency because there's so much shit in the way,
Yeah, for sure.
right?
Yeah.
Including all that craving and attachment and in my case, lots of like misperceptions and misunderstandings and confusion and ignorance.
Right, right. Like, yeah, it's so easy to just think that a guru's gonna fix you, like
Right.
that's really, I think, one of my delusions is that I'm gonna get fixed and I'm gonna get like all of the love and stability that I, should have had as a child, which, my family was great, but there were, but
Yeah.
that's kind of like those are the delusions we have is that they're going to fix our childhood. They're going to, or maybe they're an authority figure and they're trying to control me. We've got
Yeah.
all these things that
Yeah.
get in the way of receiving the blessing that actually is always coming,
It's
right?
always
It's
coming, right?
always
It's
coming.
always coming, and it's been that vibration has been coming all along, right? And it's coming through these different lineages and through these different channels. And the thing is that like if you again just use that metaphor of the tuning fork, if you took a tuning fork and you coated it in concrete or mud or manure or whatever, right? Or you wrapped it up inside of like a bunch of plastic and threw it in the ocean or whatever, it's not going to be able to vibrate. No matter, even if you had another tuning fork the size of the earth, it still wouldn't
Yeah,
have its effect,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And so you have to get that crap out of the way, do all of the chiseling, digging, cleaning, whatever it is that needs to happen to get that fork to its own natural state, right?
yeah,
So that it can receive those blessings. It
yeah.
can. It can and it will, but like there's some work to do on our side.
Yeah. Well, as Rinpoche likes to say, we have to train to be natural.
You have to train to be natural. That's right.
We're training to just get to our natural state so we can be in tune, which is like, wow, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
What
want
are
to,
all the ways that, um, I could become more natural? And I really do like the more I get into my practice,
yeah,
the more I realize that like, yeah, compassion really is the natural state. Love really is the natural state. And
right,
part of me is like, no, that's corny. But it's
yeah,
like, oh, but it's just true, you know?
right. Yeah.
There's so much less resistance
But,
there. Yeah.
I want to come back around to how things started off when we were talking about before we went to the retreat, because I think it's
Mm.
directly related to this.
Mm.
You said, and I agreed because I felt the same. I felt out of tune,
Yes, that's right.
right? There were distortions, there were
Yeah.
obscurations, there were things in the way. And then, as a result of our own diligent effort and being in the presence of our guru, we became more tuned, in tune, right?
Yeah.
And and I think if I it's beginning to dawn on me that all this talk about balance, right, is about being in tune, because when we're out of tune, when we're out of balance, that's where the suffering is, right? That's where all that, like that, all the pain and suffering inherent in human existence comes from the unnatural, out of tune state, right?
Yeah.
So all of these practices, all this mind training, everything that we're doing is so that we can get back in tune
Yeah. Back in tune with our nature.
with our nature. It's already like we
Pizza.
want we want to resonate at that frequency, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Daniel, thank you for helping me. You
Thank
know,
you,
I
Jack.
think
You helped me with this. This is so good. I
I'm
hadn't
so
even thought
glad.
about this term, and now I'm like, oh, I see what's going on
Wow.
here.
It's resonating with
It's
you.
resonating.
Well, my friend, I very much look forward to seeing you next Tuesday. I hope you have a beautiful week, and same to everyone out there listening. Love